Flights are 1-200 each, Elliot, my mother said flatly. If you can't afford it, stay behind. Her voice echoed through my Bluetooth speaker as I stood in my tiny kitchen, still wearing my EMT uniform, sweat-drenched from a grueling 14-hour shift. My name is Elliot Gray, 32 years old, single, and apparently the family's preferred financier. She said it so casually as if I were some distant acquaintance, not her son, the same son who had bailed them out over and over again. They were heading to Santorini this time. My mother, my father Malcolm, my older sister Bridget, and her husband Sean. A full week of sunsets and wine tastings, but without me. Unless I could pony up 1-200 for my own ticket, plus accommodations, of course. What stung most wasn't the money, it was the nonchalance. Like I was expected to fund their fun, but not actually be part of the fun. It's been a rough year for everyone, my mother added, as if everyone included me when I was the one who covered Dad's hospital bill last winter and floated Bridget $2,000 when Sean's consulting business went belly up. I smiled into the silence and said I understood. Of course, Mom, I'll stay behind. That was supposed to be the end of it, until that ping. A late-night notification from my credit card app that nearly made me drop my glass. 4 airline tickets purchased, 1-200 each, business class, total 4-800. My stomach knotted as I opened the details. Passenger names: Malcolm Gray, Sandra Gray, Bridget Nolan, Sean Nolan. No Elliot Gray. My fingers froze over my phone. They had used my credit card, again, without asking, no warning, no thanks. I'd seen this movie before. When I was 24, Bridget borrowed my card to temporarily cover a wedding dress alteration. She promised to repay me by the end of that month. It never happened. Dad's endless requests to co-sign loans because one day it'll all be yours. None of that worked out either. They treated me like the reliable backup plan, the guy who wouldn't say no because he's single and makes decent money. But this time something cracked. I tapped Dispute All on the app and locked the account tight. The next morning, as I sipped my cheap coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Bridget. Bridget, why is nothing paid for? We're standing at check-in. I stared at the message heart, thumping, then typed back, what you said, I stayed behind. I smiled at my own reply. But instead of sitting home stewing, I did something radical for me. I booked my own trip. Not to Santorini, just a quiet cabin in Vermont. I chose somewhere cold, crisp, and silent, the opposite of the noisy chaos they brought into my life. No one knew where I was going. No one was invited. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Dad. I didn't answer. Then came the knock on my apartment door. He was early, still wearing his Hawaiian shirt, standing stiff in the hallway like he owned the building. I stood behind the door, heart pounding but hands steady. I didn't open it. He knocked again, louder this time. Elliot, we need to talk. Nope. 7 minutes. I timed it. Then he left. Later that night, Mom's voice trembled in a voicemail. You really hurt your father today. He flew back early to speak to you. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? I laughed out loud. More like taken from me. I saved that message. Not for nostalgia, for documentation. It didn't start with the plane tickets. That was simply the latest crack in the dam. When I was 22, Dad asked me to co-sign on a loan to remodel the kitchen. It'll increase the house value he promised, and one day it'll be yours. Spoiler, the house was refinanced twice, and the money mysteriously disappeared, largely to fund Sean's second failed startup. When I was 26, Mom needed help just for a few weeks covering utilities while she cared for her sick sister. Those few weeks turned into nearly a year. And last winter, when I caught the flu so bad I could barely sit upright, I asked Bridget to bring me groceries. She said she couldn't. She was watching a friend's kids while her nails dried. You understand, right? Yeah, I understood. I always did. I understood that I was their reliable ATM, their crisis line, their fallback plan. But I wasn't anymore. The next day, as I unpacked at my Vermont cabin, another text from Bridget arrived. Bridget, grow up, Elliot. You can't punish the whole family over one misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I laughed again. They didn't misunderstand. They counted on me covering them. And when I didn't, they panicked. They thought silence meant surrender, that if they just knocked hard enough, long enough, I'd cave like I always did. But they didn't understand I had changed. That night, sitting by the fireplace, I drafted an invoice. Itemized. Precise. 600, Bridget's temporary wedding dress alteration. 2,000, loan to Sean when his business collapsed. 850, Dad's urgent care deductible. 300, groceries and utilities unpaid by Mom. 4,800, 4 business class tickets charged without consent. 2 attend late fees and interest from their fraud. Total 860. I attached it to an email addressed to all of them. Subject line, formal reimbursement request. In the body of the email I wrote, per your belief that family supports each other, please see this breakdown of financial assistance I've provided over the past 5 years. Full repayment is expected within 30 business days. As of this moment, I will no longer subsidize family expenses. Then I hit send. The flood of responses started within 10 minutes. Anger, shock, manipulation disguised as guilt. But I didn't reply. For the first time in my adult life, I was untouchable, and it felt amazing. The next morning, I woke up before dawn sunlight just beginning to creep through the cabin window. For the first time in years, I felt light. Lighter than I had any right to feel after sending that invoice. But there was no weight in my chest, no tight knot in my stomach, just calm. By the time I poured coffee and stepped onto the porch, the messages were pouring in again. My phone buzzed non-stop. First, Mom, Elliot, this isn't how families handle things. We should be talking this through in person. Then Dad, blunt and dismissive. The invoice is offensive. You're treating us like strangers. Bridget predictably was the loudest. Are you kidding me? An invoice. I was at the airport crying. Sean was humiliated at check-in. You made Mom sick with worry, all because you want to make a point, but they were missing the point entirely. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, about boundaries, about reclaiming myself after years of being treated like their financial backup plan. I put my phone face down and left it on silent. The day stretched out in front of me, mine to fill however I wanted. I took a hike through the woods behind the cabin, breathing in crisp air, noticing birdsong I hadn't appreciated in years. I felt taller somehow, like shedding the emotional weight they'd piled on me all these years made my posture straighter, my steps lighter. When I got back that evening, there were 12 missed calls, most from Mom and Bridget. The final one was a voicemail from Dad. His voice was low, almost soft. You made your point, Elliot, but this isn't the way. Family doesn't do this to each other. Family doesn't do this to each other. I almost laughed. What did he think they'd been doing to me all these years? I didn't call back. Instead, I sat on the porch as the sun set over the Vermont hills, sipping cheap red wine from a chipped mug, thinking about every single time I'd sacrificed for them, working through the flu, picking up overtime shifts to help cover their mistakes, quietly absorbing their debts without complaint. That evening, a new text came in from Sean, my brother-in-law, the guy who never even thanked me when I helped pay their rent last winter. Sean, we didn't know the card would decline. We assumed you'd help, like always. That's what you do, isn't it? That one hit differently. It was so casual, so entitled. They assumed. They counted on me not setting a boundary because I never had before. That night, I didn't reply. Instead, I did something that might seem petty to some, but felt completely necessary to me. I gathered every receipt, every Venmo request that had gone unpaid, every text message asking for help that I'd answered without hesitation. I scanned them all into a folder on my laptop and labeled it evidence. Not because I planned to sue them, but because I needed the record for myself to remind me this wasn't about some single misunderstanding. This was a pattern. By the third day, their tone shifted again. Mom sent a long text filled with half-hearted apologies. We didn't mean to hurt you, Elliot. We just thought you were okay with it all. You always seemed fine before. She didn't get it. I had seemed fine because I'd been conditioned to seem fine. Bridget followed up with another message, defensive and sharp. We're all struggling, Elliot. Everyone's got problems. You think you're the only one who's stressed. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat down and reviewed my finances again. For the first time in years, I saw them clearly, my debts, my dwindling savings, but I also felt in control. No more mystery charges. No more emergencies that weren't my emergencies. That evening, Dad tried to show up in person again. I saw his reflection in the cabin's glass door as I cooked dinner. He stood there for several minutes, knocking softly at first, then louder. When I didn't answer, he finally left. But before he did, he slipped something under the door, a handwritten letter. I didn't read it immediately. I left it on the counter while I ate my dinner, savoring every bite without guilt or pressure. Then after washing my plate, I sat down and opened the envelope. Inside was a rambling letter filled with excuses framed as regret. We didn't realize how much you were carrying. We thought you wanted to help. If we could go back, we might have done things differently. But nowhere in the letter did they take accountability for using my card without permission. No mention of treating me like their financial crutch. No real apology. It was as if they wanted me to absolve them without them having to change at all. I folded the letter carefully and filed it away in the evidence folder. I knew then what they didn't. This was not a negotiation. I wasn't looking for their apology anymore. I didn't even need their understanding. I needed distance. Later that night, a final text from Bridget arrived. "You've turned your back on blood, Elliot. You'll regret this." I stared at that message feeling nothing but clarity. They didn't get it. They still thought this was about the invoice or the credit card dispute. They couldn't grasp that this was the end of an era, the end of me bleeding myself dry so they could live comfortably. The next morning, I woke up to something unexpected, a message on social media from Lydia. Lydia, the ex-wife of Sean, the brother-in-law, who had milked me for money while treating me like an afterthought. We hadn't spoken in years. Her message was simple. "Hey, Elliot, we haven't talked in forever, but I think you deserve to know something." Curiosity piqued, I responded. "Know what?" She sent a PDF attachment with no explanation. I hesitated a second, then opened it. Inside was a trove of screenshots and bank statements showing Sean had been quietly draining money from mom and dad's retirement accounts. Gambling debts, private transfers, crypto speculation. Sean hadn't just used my card. He had been bleeding them too. There were emails attached as well, messages from my own parents begging Lydia not to expose the truth, pleading with her to keep it quiet because Elliot mustn't find out. They had known all along. They knew about Sean's gambling and had been hiding it quietly, leaning on me even harder to cover up the damage. My mind raced, but one thing became crystal clear. They never planned to respect me. They never even planned to stop. They would have continued draining me indefinitely if I hadn't locked my card. This was bigger than I had realized. I messaged Lydia back. "Why are you sending me this now?" Her reply came instantly. "Because you finally did what I never could. You walked away. You deserve to know the whole story." For the first time in a very long time, I felt something unexpected vindication. That night, I printed every page of Lydia's file and added it to my growing collection of evidence. I was done doubting myself. When Dad called the next day, I didn't answer. When Mom sent another guilt-laden voicemail, I didn't listen. I was free, and I wasn't going back. After reading Lydia's file, I sat there for hours processing it all. The betrayal was worse than I thought. This wasn't just a family leaning a little too much on the reliable son. This was systemic, calculated. My parents and sister knew Sean was siphoning money from them, and they let it happen. No, they helped hide it. And all the while, they leaned on me harder, tightening their grip as they fell deeper into their mess. A realization settled over me like cold fog. They weren't going to stop. They couldn't. Their entire pattern of survival was built on pretending I'd always pick up the slack. But now I had proof. Real documented proof, not just memories of their manipulation, but hard evidence, bank records, emails, transactions. It was a strange kind of comfort. I no longer had to argue with myself about whether I was overreacting. This was bigger than emotions. This was financial abuse. I decided not to engage right away. Instead, I kept quiet. I didn't respond to their texts. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't react when Bridget messaged again. "You're making this bigger than it is. Families forgive. Come home." Come home to what? A life where I was a walking debit card. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and wrote a second invoice, but this time it wasn't just for me. I calculated everything Sean had stolen from them too. The total was staggering. Nearly $28,000 between my own support and the retirement money Sean drained while everyone played dumb. I formatted the document professionally, clear columns, specific dates, amounts, and names. Then I emailed it to the family group chat with a simple subject line: outstanding balances and breach of trust documentation. The body of the email was even simpler. "This is what you owe. 30 days, no negotiation. If you fail to address this, I'll submit it directly to the authorities. This is your final warning." I hit send. The silence that followed was deafening. I turned off my phone and decided to reclaim the peace they had stolen for years. For the next few days, I focused on myself. I took long walks, cooked good meals, and spent time reading something I hadn't done properly in years. One night, while reading by the fire, a knock came at the door. For a split second, my stomach tightened old reflexes, but then I reminded myself I owed them nothing. I peeked through the window. It wasn't my parents this time, it was Lydia. I opened the door cautiously. She gave me a soft, almost sheepish smile. "Sorry for showing up like this, Elliot. Can we talk?" I nodded, genuinely surprised to see her in person. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. We sat on the porch wrapped in blankets as the cool Vermont air swirled around us. Lydia spoke first. "I left Sean years ago because of this behavior," she said quietly. "His gambling, his entitlement, it was endless. And your family, they enabled it, Elliot. I saw it happen in real time. She paused, looking at me carefully. I'm telling you this because I know how it feels to walk away from people who should have loved you better. Her words hit something deep inside me, a part of me that still wanted to believe I could fix this family if I just tried harder, but I couldn't. I never could. I'm proud of you, Lydia added. You did what I couldn't. I stayed too long and let them drain me. You didn't. Her validation mattered more than I expected. It was strange but comforting to hear someone say it out loud that walking away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. After she left, I felt steadier. The next morning, I opened my laptop and drafted my final communication to my parents and Bridget, a letter, not an email. In it, I was calm but firm. You all made choices. Choices that treated me not as a son or brother, but as a financial resource. I will not carry your burdens any longer. I have gathered documentation, and I have no hesitation to act legally if you continue to try to access my accounts, property, or peace. This is not anger. This is clarity. I wish you healing, but from a distance. Do not contact me again unless it's in the form of full repayment. I printed the letter, mailed it certified, and then blocked all their numbers. That night, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I slept soundly. Not because my problems were solved, but because I was finally free of them. But freedom doesn't mean peace comes immediately. The following week, I received a notification from my bank, another unauthorized attempt to use my old card. This time, a failed attempt to rent a car in New Jersey. Sean, it was all the confirmation I needed. I filed a formal fraud report with my bank. I included Lydia's documentation and their email chains admitting to knowing about Sean's gambling. Then I called an attorney. I wasn't looking for revenge. I just wanted the chapter closed properly and permanently. The attorney was efficient and kind, explaining that what they'd done could be pursued civilly and possibly even criminally, given the pattern and paper trail. You have a solid case, she said, especially with the documentation and the clear breach of financial consent. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't fighting this battle alone. Meanwhile, Lydia and I stayed in touch. We exchanged messages, funny memes, even shared stories about what it was like navigating family chaos as the designated reliable one. One evening, she sent me a message that made me laugh out loud. Remember when Sean said you were too uptight to ever take a break? Turns out you're the only one who knows how to take a break permanently. That line stayed with me. And it was true. I was finally taking my life back. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the messages from my family dried up. Their silence, once manipulative, now felt powerless. Then a letter arrived, this time from Dad. It was terse and defensive. You've made your point. We've all suffered. Your mother barely sleeps. Bridget is distraught, and Sean is in trouble because of your threats. This family used to mean something. You've torn that apart. No apology, just more blame, more twisting of the truth. I didn't even respond. Instead, I filed it in a folder labeled Proof of Detachment. That was my new philosophy. I wasn't going to sit this argue anymore. I wasn't going to engage. My silence was my strength now. As the days passed, I began to build something new for myself. I enrolled in a pottery class just because I'd always wanted to. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected for years because I was always working overtime. And most importantly, I met someone. Her name was Clara, a pediatric nurse with a warm laugh and zero interest in who my family was or what they'd done to me. She saw me, not as the reliable ATM, not as the dependable son, but as a man finding his footing again. With her, I didn't feel drained. I felt understood, safe. We started spending weekends together, cooking, hiking, talking late into the night about everything and nothing. For the first time in my adult life, I felt whole. I hadn't just walked away from my family. I'd walked toward myself. Clara and I quickly found a rhythm together. Quiet mornings spent making coffee, lazy afternoons exploring hidden hiking trails near her apartment, and evenings full of laughter and calm conversation. There was an ease to being with her that felt foreign at first, like my body and mind didn't quite believe life could be this soft after years of exhaustion. But I welcomed it, every bit of it. It was only 2 months since I'd shut that door on my family, and yet my life already felt entirely different. My bank account wasn't bursting, but it was finally stable. There were no surprise charges, no last-minute Venmo requests, no begging voicemails, or emotional blackmail disguised as motherly concern. There was just me, my work, my weekends, and the people I chose. That's what struck me most. I finally felt like I was choosing my life rather than reacting to it. But as these things often go, the calm was disrupted sooner than I expected. On a Sunday morning, Clara and I sat outside at a cafe we'd made our spot, sunlight warming our faces as we shared a cinnamon roll. I checked my phone casually, and there it was, an email from my father. The subject line read simply "meeting request." My stomach tightened instinctively, but I didn't let the feeling control me. I waited until I got home before opening it. His message was short, almost cold. "Elliot, we need to speak. There are things you don't understand about our situation. Please come by the house this week. Bring your documentation if you must. We are willing to talk." Willing to talk. That phrase stayed with me. It was as though they thought they were offering me a favor by finally being willing to acknowledge the damage they'd caused, as though I'd been the unreasonable one. I sat with the email for hours before deciding no. I wasn't walking into that house, into their space where they held the power. I didn't need another round of circular conversations, gaslighting, or guilt trips disguised as dialogue. Instead, I drafted a short reply. "I'm not coming by. If you wish to acknowledge what's happened, you can put it in writing. No more conversations, only documentation." That was it. No apology or pleasantries, just clear boundaries. A few days later, a large envelope arrived at my door. No return address, but I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. I sat down on the floor to open it, a strange cocktail of curiosity and skepticism stirring inside me. Inside, a long letter, 5 handwritten pages, and a check stapled to the back. The letter rambled as expected. Apologies that weren't really apologies. Explanations that sounded like excuses and revisionist history about how hard they had it and how we thought you were fine, because you never spoke up before. But the last page was different. It listed every dollar they owed me, with a final total of $8,060, the exact figure I had invoiced, and the check matched it down to the penny. There was no heartfelt apology attached to the money, no promise to change, just a cold transaction dressed up as an act of reconciliation. And honestly, that was fine by me. I pinned the check to my corkboard next to a note I'd written for myself months earlier. "You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." I didn't cash the check right away. I wanted it to sit there as a reminder that I no longer needed their money or their approval. I could decide what that money meant and what to do with it. A few days later, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I took the check to the bank and deposited it, but not for my own use. Instead, I transferred every cent to a scholarship fund at the local community college for nursing students who, like me, were likely shouldering burdens too heavy for their age. It felt right. It felt final. Their money would go to someone who deserved support, not to fund another brunch for Sean or another emergency for Bridget. Meanwhile, my parents and Bridget fell silent again. Their silence was no longer threatening or manipulative. It was powerless now. I had changed, and they knew it. My attorney confirmed the fraud report had been received and documented with clear records in case Sean or any of them tried to use my identity again. The locks on my finances were tight. My boundaries were unshakable. But it wasn't just my finances that changed. My mindset shifted too. Clara and I talked openly about everything. For the first time in a relationship, I didn't hide my family history. I told her about the debts, the betrayals, the guilt, and the silence I'd lived with for years. She didn't flinch. She just listened, held my hand, and reminded me gently that I wasn't broken. I was recovering. Her acceptance healed something deep inside me. She didn't see me as a problem to fix or a hero to worship for surviving my family's behavior. She saw me as a whole person worthy simply for being myself. One afternoon, as we walked through the farmer's market together, Clara stopped at a booth selling handmade wooden signs. One of them caught her eye, and she smiled as she pointed to it. It read, "You can say no and still be good." She bought it without hesitation and handed it to me. "That's your new mantra," she said. "Put it somewhere you'll see it every day." And I did. I hung it on the wall by the door right above the hooks where we hung our jackets. Every time I left the house or came home, it greeted me, reminding me that setting boundaries didn't make me a bad son or a cruel brother. It made me healthy. It made me free. The rest of that summer felt like a rebirth. Clara and I planned small trips together, a hiking weekend in the Adirondacks, a quiet beach getaway to Cape Cod. Nothing extravagant, just peaceful, simple, mine. I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stopped checking my phone nervously every few hours, wondering what guilt-laden message might arrive next. They didn't reach out again. The silence became not a weapon, but a gift. And then one unexpected morning, I received a handwritten letter from Lydia. This one was short and to the point. "Elliot, just wanted you to know I'm moving back to the city permanently. I've started over fully and finally. Watching you take your life back inspired me to close my last chapter too. Thank you." Her note made me realize that setting boundaries didn't just free me, it rippled outward. My courage gave others permission to reclaim their lives too. That was legacy enough for me. As summer turned to fall, my life kept unfolding in small, beautiful ways. Simple things felt profound now. The quiet joy of Saturday mornings with Clara, unhurried, coffee, spontaneous plans, no burdens waiting in my inbox or gnawing at the edges of my peace. I began to understand what true freedom meant. Not just the absence of debt or drama, but the space to breathe without feeling responsible for everyone else's comfort. The silence from my family stretched on, and it was no longer awkward or loud. It was just absence finally neutral. No texts demanding explanations, no sudden voicemails dripping with guilt, no more knocks at my door. The stillness they had left behind wasn't empty. It was full of possibility. Even work felt lighter. When I clocked out of my shift, I actually left work behind instead of dreading what fresh chaos waited on my phone. My coworkers noticed too. One day my colleague Marcus chuckled and said, "You've been different lately, Elliot, like you exhaled after holding your breath for years." He was right, but healing is rarely linear. Just as I was settling into this rhythm, an unexpected reminder of my past arrived. A large formal envelope stamped with an unfamiliar return address, the Office of Family Law Investigations. For a heartbeat, my stomach dropped. What now? I opened it carefully. Inside was a letter informing me that Sean had become the subject of a formal investigation for financial misconduct with my prior fraud report and Lydia's documentation forming part of the evidence file. A strange wave of emotion washed over me, not anger, not fear, but relief. For the first time, an external authority was validating what I'd endured. What they had all denied, dismissed, minimized. This wasn't just about family drama anymore. It was about accountability. Attached to the letter was a statement that I might be called upon to testify or submit further documentation. I smiled quietly to myself. I was ready if needed. I had the receipts literally. I shared the news with Clara later that evening as we cooked dinner together. She wrapped her arms around me from behind and whispered, "You did this. You stopped them. You're not powerless anymore." Her words landed exactly where I needed them to land. I wasn't powerless anymore. That night, as I sat on the couch with Clara sipping tea and listening to the rain tapping against the windows, I felt more grounded than I had in years. But there was one loose end still lingering: my mother. She hadn't written again, hadn't called, hadn't made any attempt at contact since mailing the check. It felt deliberate, almost like she was holding out, waiting to see if I'd soften first. Then, as if summoned by thought, an email from her arrived late one night. The subject line was empty. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short message I saw Lydia last week. She mentioned, "You seem happy now. I want you to know we're still your family. You can come back anytime. Love, Mom." There it was, the familiar mixture of guilt and denial, wrapped in a soft tone, inviting me to return as if none of this had ever happened. But I wasn't who I used to be. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat quietly for a long time, reflecting on what it really meant to come back. The truth was, I'd never left them. They left me long ago when they treated me like a resource instead of a son. Days passed. No follow-up from Mom, no new drama from Bridget or Dad. Even Sean stayed silent. My therapist called it the extinction burst, that final frantic push before an old pattern dies out completely. And she was right. Their silence now felt like resignation, not strategy. Clara and I made plans for the future. We talked about moving in together before winter. She invited me to meet her parents, who lived just outside the city. The invitation startled me. At first, family dinners were something I used to dread, but her parents turned out to be the polar opposite of mine. Warm, curious, respectful. They asked questions because they cared, not because they wanted something. When her mother hugged me after our first dinner together, I felt my body tense instinctively before relaxing into her embrace. It wasn't transactional, no hidden agenda, just kindness. And slowly I allowed myself to believe that this was what family could look like. A few weeks later, I decided to clean out my apartment before the move. In the back of a drawer, I found that old letter from my father, the one full of blame and self-pity. I read it one last time, not with anger, but with clarity, then shredded it. Letting go didn't need a dramatic ritual. Sometimes it was just shredding an old letter without fanfare. As I packed my things, I realized how many reminders of my old life I no longer needed. The framed family photos came down, the little mementos from childhood vacations gone. Even the worn-out sweater Dad had gifted me years ago found its way into the donation bag. I wasn't erasing the past. I was simply choosing what I carried forward. By the time Clara and I moved into our new place, a sunlit 2-bedroom near the park, I felt lighter, freer, almost weightless. We unpacked together that weekend, filling our new space, not with artifacts of obligation, but with items that mattered to us: books, art, kitchen gadgets, throw pillows she adored. We built a home that felt like a simple, cozy warm. One evening, as we hung the wooden sign Clara had bought at the farmer's market, "You can say no and still be good," she turned to me and said softly, "Do you realize you've built a whole new life, Elliot? Not just a home, but a life that belongs to you." I did realize it, fully. And for the first time since this journey began, I didn't feel haunted by the silence from my family. Their absence no longer felt like a punishment, it felt like peace. They weren't reaching out anymore. No more knocks at the door. No more emails or voicemails. They were finally accepting the boundary I'd drawn. Maybe begrudgingly, maybe resentfully, but acceptance all the same. And I had accepted it too. Because this was my life now, a life filled with people who saw me as I was, not as a bank account or a fallback plan. A life where I could say no without guilt. A life where I chose where my love and energy went. Clara and I planned a small housewarming party, a few close friends, nothing fancy. I invited Lydia too. When she arrived that evening, she hugged me and whispered, "You look happy." And I was, really truly happy. Not perfect, not unscarred, but whole. The housewarming evening was quiet and warm, just the way I wanted it. Soft music played in the background, laughter floated through the apartment, and for once every person in the room was someone I'd chosen to have in my life. No one expected anything from me but presence. No one asked for money or apologies or explanations. Lydia stayed late that night. As she helped me clear plates, she smiled and said, "You know, Elliot, this place feels different. Not just the apartment, but you. Lighter, freer." She was right. I felt it too. Even so, I couldn't help but notice how my past still casts small shadows, the way old scars tingle when rain is coming. Moments would sneak up on me, a memory, a phrase, the way someone's tone would sound too much like my father's. But instead of spiraling, I paused and reminded myself those days were over. I was no longer a lifeline they could tug when they felt entitled. That understanding became more real when an envelope arrived 2 weeks after the party. No return address, just my name written carefully on the front. Inside 5 pages, handwritten by Bridget. The letter began with what felt like sincere regret, but quickly dissolved into familiar patterns. She recounted childhood memories, highlighting how close we once were, how she'd leaned on me because you were the strong one, Elliot. Then came the inevitable pivot. We're all struggling now. Dad's health is declining, Mom's lonely. Sean's facing serious legal trouble. Then the closing blow. We're family. No matter what's happened, we can fix this if you just come back. But even as I read, I felt no pull, no guilt, no urge to reply. Her words felt like echoes from a distant cave I'd long since walked out of. I folded the letter slowly, slipped it into a drawer, and left it there. I didn't need to burn it or respond to it. The act of not answering was response enough. Clara noticed my quiet that evening and gently asked if I was okay. I told her about the letter and ended simply, "It doesn't hurt like it used to." She smiled softly. "That's growth, Elliot." We sat together in peaceful silence, and for the first time, I truly believe that freedom doesn't mean forgetting where you came from. It means no longer letting it control where you're going. In the following days, small but profound shifts kept happening. I deleted old text threads, archived voicemails I once replayed endlessly looking for hidden meanings. I stopped checking their social media accounts. I no longer cared where they went or what they were doing. My curiosity about them had evaporated, replaced by curiosity about my own future. Clara and I planned a trip together, a real vacation, not an escape. We picked a small town in Maine, all coastal cliffs and lighthouses. As I booked the flights, I realized this was the first vacation I'd paid for, entirely for myself since college. No guilt attached, no calculations about what the family needed from me first. Before we left, Lydia and I met for coffee one last time, before her own move back to the city. She told me she'd found work at a law firm specializing in financial abuse cases. "Your story made me realize I wasn't alone," she said quietly, "and now I can help other people like us." Her words reminded me of something I'd nearly forgotten. This whole painful chapter hadn't been wasted. It shaped me into someone stronger and clearer. It even helped someone else, Lydia, find her path. The day Clara and I left for Maine, I stood in our apartment doorway for a long moment before locking it. This was mine now. This peace, this life. No one else held the key but me. As we drove north, Clara reached over and took my hand. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked softly, eyes on the road. I thought about that. About the years spent shouldering burdens that weren't mine. About every drained bank account, every guilt-ridden conversation, every time they treated me like a reliable wallet rather than a loved one. "No," I said after a while. "Not anymore. I regret that it took me so long to say no. But I don't regret saying it now." She squeezed my hand and smiled understanding, without needing a long explanation. And that was the most beautiful part of this new life. Nothing had to be explained. No justification, no defense. I existed as myself enough without conditions. When we arrived in Maine, the salty breeze hit my face, and I felt a deep, full breath leave my chest. I hadn't realized until that moment how much tension I'd still been carrying. At dinner that night, Clara raised her glass and said simply, "To freedom in every sense of the word." I clinked my glass to hers and smiled, "To freedom." The next morning I received one final message from my father. It was a voicemail. I didn't listen to it for days, then finally played it out of curiosity. His voice was quiet, tired. "Elliot, I guess you're really gone this time. I don't know who you are anymore. I hope you're happy." And that was it. But the line that stood out most wasn't an insult or a plea. It was that phrase, "I don't know who you are anymore." And he was right. They didn't know me anymore. Not because I'd become a stranger, but because I'd become someone they never truly bothered to understand. A man who finally understood his worth, who stopped trading peace for approval, who finally chose himself. As I deleted the voicemail, I felt no bitterness, only release. Closure didn't come as an apology. It didn't come as an admission of guilt or a moment of reconciliation. It came as me choosing again and again to live without their approval. That trip to Maine became a milestone in my life. Every sunrise on those cliffs reminded me peace isn't given, it's claimed. And I claimed it. 6 months later, Clara and I hosted friends for dinner at our apartment. There was laughter, warmth, and comfort, none of it laced with guilt or manipulation. As the evening ended and guests filed out, Clara leaned against the doorframe and smiled at me. "You look happy," she said softly. I smiled back, feeling it fully this time. I am. Not just relieved, not just stable, but happy. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't the man my parents had treated like an endless resource. I wasn't the brother who silently absorbed everyone's crises. I was Elliot, just Elliot, a man who finally lived his life on his own terms. And this life, it was mine, completely mine. Story 2. I received the message uninviting me shortly after they sent the invitation on a Tuesday. The envelope had the thickness, cream color, and gold filigree that you would expect from an Ivy League wedding or a senator's fundraiser. The front said Bristow Family Reunion, Fairmont Hotel, San Francisco, August 15th, 7 p.m. I didn't open it, not necessary. The name of the hotel was too familiar. It was listed under the Elite Partners Platinum tier on my tablet's client list. That was my electronic signature verifying the reservation on the contract. My cousin Olivia, who is always the unofficial family coordinator, buzzed a message on my phone a few moments later, the one with the courteously wrapped bad news. "Hello, Lila. Just so you know, this year's Fairmont is completely booked. It will be a formal event with many guests arriving by plane. I hope it works for you." The emoji. The unspoken symbol of exclusion, not a complete rejection, a courteous erasure only. I had previously seen this. Birthday invitations never came. During career announcements, my name was silently removed from group chats. I was never called a failure. They simply acted as though I didn't exist. I went back to my desk. The San Francisco skyline glowed in a misty haze as the rain pattered softly against the window of my 27th floor corner office. My screen still displayed the Bristol event contract. Olivia made the reservation via my concierge platform at the Fairmont Hotel. It had been flagged for approval by our assistant. For last-minute high-profile reservations, I personally approved a 30% premium. They were unaware that the same girl who used to work late into the night cleaning hotel rooms was now the CEO of Morgan Properties, which owns 15 historic buildings across Northern California. Unpredictable lost cause was what they continued to whisper. Let them speak. I never desired their acceptance. The night was mine. I walked over to the bookshelf and took out a tiny black frame that was hidden behind my business books. There was a battered plastic badge inside. Lila Housekeeping, San Francisco Grand Pacific Hotel, 2013. That night I placed it prominently on my desk to remind myself why I had said yes to myself when everyone else had said no, even though I hadn't seen it in years. There are two kinds of people in this world, according to my mother, those who inherit names and those who carry legacies. After supper, when the wine had relaxed her speech, she would whisper it. We were supposed to, not as though everything he said was legally binding. When I first realized what my role was, I was 11 years old. The burden, not the name. They intended for me to join Morgan Capital as a junior associate by the time I turned 24. My name was already on the door of an office. Morgan Lila. Business plan. Less than a year passed. I asked the wrong questions, not because I didn't succeed. Inquiries concerning layoffs. No one provided an explanation regarding the outsourcing of janitorial staff or the long-term employees' disappearance of their retirement fund. Your thinking is too limited. From behind his desk of polished oak, my father let out a bark. You're blind. No, I replied. All I'm interested in is what people carry. Our last meaningful conversation ended there. Our relationship shifted to a quiet distance after that. Birthdays are disregarded and texts are not read. I enrolled in and graduated first in my class from San Francisco State University's Hospitality Management program. Not one member of the family appeared. I was cleaning rooms at a dilapidated motel close to Market Street a year later. Each shift has 10 rooms, wet linen and towels that smelled like bleach. However, it was truthful. I started from scratch when building it. No freebies. Olivia sent me the wedding picture from her reception at that point. Everyone was glowing, smiling faces sparkling champagne and tailored suits. Even though I wasn't in the photo, I can still clearly recall that evening. A dishwasher was on break and the DJ had left early, so I sat at a table close to the kitchen. Olivia explained that it was because I appeared more at ease there. A screenshot of a family group chat showed up in my inbox 2 days later. A picture with a caption of my old housekeeping badge. Cleaning rooms was her goal. She must have gotten what she wanted. They chuckled. Nobody raised their voice, not even Aunt Marlene. You don't have to be like the others said, the aunt who once gave me lemon drops in a whisper. I discovered that day. Not all erasure is loud or furious. Sometimes there is silence. You sit far from the head of the table, get cropped out of enough pictures, leave off enough messages, and eventually start to question whether you were ever there at all. So I let it go. I started creating something that no one could ignore instead of waiting for them to notice me. With only 3 months' worth of savings, an old laptop, and one duffel bag, I left San Francisco. There was only a desperate need for silence, no grand scheme. Somewhere no one gave a damn about my family, and my last name was irrelevant. In Woodstock, Vermont, I rented a tiny attic room in a dilapidated farmhouse. May and Frank, an elderly couple who operated it, paid me in cash to take reservations, change linens, and deal with latecomers. I was given room 9, which had a single bed, a skylight that framed the stars, and a low slanted ceiling. I adored it. That was the beginning of true solitude. The concept, not the company. I scrawled questions in a battered spiral notebook. What caused some visitors to return while others disappeared? Why would a stranger feel noticed in a place they had never been to before? Safe I watched. I tried things out. A confused sign, a crooked bench, and a buzzing lamp. I made all the repairs without a budget. Just be mindful. Soon guests started asking for Lila, not Miss Morgan, Miss Lila. When May and Frank decided to retire, I showed up with spreadsheets, market research, and a vision. I made an offer they accepted. I renamed it Maple House, my first property, my first real win. 5 rooms, no employees, just me. I poured my heart into it, scrubbing every floorboard, replacing musty curtains with linen panels, painting walls in soft shades of sage and cream on every nightstand. I left a handwritten card. You're here now, you can rest. Guests remembered that line. I didn't hire a PR firm. I didn't need one. What did word of mouth do? No advertising effort could. Guests shared stories with their friends and raised awareness. Support came from attention, not millions. Enough, but not overnight. I opened a second property, Maple Ridge, in less than 5 years. Then came a third, Maple Harbor, which was subtly superior to the larger resorts, despite being smaller. I gave them titles, respect, and fair pay when I promoted former housekeepers to site managers. No rigid uniforms, just dignified real work. Subscribe right away if you think that starting over and quiet strength are powerful. You won't want to miss what comes next because Maple House's journey is just getting started. No hollow greetings, no phony smiles. Only those who proudly understood the true meaning of service. Never give in. By the time I turned 31, Maple House had subtly developed into a reputable brand of its own. Subtle luxury, careful consideration, no velvet ropes, no fountains made of marble, only true dignity, done correctly. I never signed my name on any of it, though. Under MP, the properties were listed. Morgan Holdings. Most people thought the CEO was a man who was ideal for me. I wasn't hiding. I was defending my creation. I was able to make something they couldn't destroy because of the silence. I kept my old plastic badge behind my desk, tucked away between vendor catalogs and fabric samples. The center of Lila's housekeeping was faded, cracked and scratched. It should have been replaced long ago, but I wore it for a long time. Presented it simply. No glass black frame, not affixed to any wall. Just for me, not for show. I held it some nights after countless spreadsheets and signatures. To remember the foundation, not to relive the suffering. I didn't construct Maple House to make a statement. I made it to fit in. One of Vermont's most upscale boutique hotels, Maple Harbor, was their choice for the family reunion. They didn't know. The corporate portal was used to make the reservation for Maple Harbor. In the family conversation, Olivia boasted about using her connections to get the desired location. "We're very fortunate," she said. The manager at the front desk informed her that, although the owner was very private, everything was expedited as soon as they saw the family name. They were correct. I personally approved the linen color scheme doubled. The staff upgraded their service, imported fresh flowers, and expedited it myself. Naturally, digitally. Remember to subscribe if you experience that silent moment of victory with me, when they eventually discover whose foundation they have been standing on. The next chapter begins. I hadn't signed a document in years, of course. When you leave, silence is the best defense, not a single fingerprint. S. Bristow was listed as the host on the reservation, which was made using Morgan Hospitality's Elite tier. The irony could have broken glass. Hannah, our guest relations manager, was reassigned to manage the account. Sophie was just another overly involved client who was fixated on spreadsheets and flower arrangements. She was intelligent, steady, and blissfully ignorant of family drama to Hannah. Sophie requested a custom floral arrangement with blue and white delphiniums and hydrangeas a week prior to the reunion. Hannah was summoned to my office. I told Hannah to be kind to them, but not gentle. Curious, she cocked her head. "What are you saying?" "Don't treat them like delicate glass. Simply serve them as they would like to be served." Slowly, a knowing smile crept onto Hannah's face as she nodded. I didn't have to explain everything to her. I sent just one message that evening. "You're coming, Janine, in 2. Get there at 6:40. Avoid letting them in too soon." I saw the red receipt, but she didn't respond. That was sufficient. For the following 6 days. Sleep was an uncommon visitor. I went over every aspect, including the menu options, signage, lighting cues, and room layout. I made one small adjustment at the last minute. Typically, a printed welcome note from the host family was placed in each guest suite. The card read this time: "We hope your visit serves as a reminder of your origins and what you never really lost." I didn't fully sign up Layla. I didn't have to. On the day of the reunion, I didn't go through the front doors of the Grand. Rather, as I always did, I slipped in through the service entrance, passing carts full of fresh linens and trays of champagne glasses. Entering through the back door to enter the center of the house has a sacred quality. It helps you stay grounded. My outfit was navy, not wearing any jewelry, a hairpin. Quite nicely. Nothing. Called out for attention. For me, the room did that. They arrived in pairs at 6:45 p.m., followed by small groups. All the nervous sparkle of people who are desperate to be noticed, from loud laughter to firm handshakes. Sophie, too. Unaware that she was entering my home, she entered like a cruise director, grinning and waving. 10 minutes later, my father showed up with 2 strangers on either side. I instantly recognized sleepwatches, polished shoes, and finance types. The kind of men who use spreadsheets to build empires, but don't remember the janitors' names. From a tiny monitor hidden just past the kitchen hallway, I observed. Present but hidden. I was not missed. The beauty of it was that no one searched for me anymore because I had been removed from their story so long ago. However, that was going to change. The ballroom lights dimmed just enough to silence the conversation and pique interest at precisely 7:15. Then the noise. 3 gentle chimes, slow and methodical. Sophie was in the middle of describing the personalized glassware. With a clipboard in hand and his customary cool professionalism, our guest services manager Everett came over to her. "The owner has asked that we start the welcome presentation right away. Miss Bristow," he said softly. The owner was perplexed by Sophie's blinks. Well, I don't believe that's required. I have been working with your office for weeks, and we have already expressed our gratitude to the staff. Usually the owner doesn't do these things. Everett remained silent. All he did was turn to the stage. The screen came to life, white and crisp with a soft navy background and a clean serif font. It's hard to miss. Layla Morgan, the CEO of P. Morgan Holdings, founded Maple Harbor. The space grew cold. Sophie's float broke on the marble floor after slipping out of her hands. The back did not speak, but my father's jaw tensed. There was a murmur. Hold on, what? Above the ballroom, I stepped onto the landing, baby dress poised and composed, hairpin back heels clicking softly. I was just like the woman they said I would never be. Good night, I said in a calm, steady voice. I am aware that many of you were surprised to see me here tonight. Hold on. When the table attempted to laugh, there was a nervous chuckle. After all, you didn't invite me. Letting the words hang, I said. However, I felt it was time for you to be properly welcomed to Maple Harbor. After all, I let my gaze roam the crowd. You're in my house right now. Mouths parted, chairs shuffled. Rose whispers. Sophie moved forward apprehensively. The cheeks turned red. Crazy. What are you doing, Lila? She muttered. I looked into her cool, unblinking eyes. Just like you taught me. Entering. This hotel was reserved in your name, I said in a quiet but distinct voice. You stated that the Bristow name was the reason the owner showed you courtesy, correct? That was accurate. I provided you with precisely what you requested, plus 20%. I spoke without flinching. That was the triumph. You talked about me for years as if I were some far-off embarrassment, a dropout, a housekeeper, the girl who squandered her name. You said I vanished. I didn't go away, though. They simply stopped observing. I looked around the room bases, older, more rigid, motionless, and adorned with the fragile astonishment of being caught off guard. Their uneasiness was nothing new. The story had changed, so it was simply louder now. My dad got up. Layla. His voice was unreadable and rough. This place is yours, I responded. Equally across 4 states, adding that I own 17. He didn't respond. Not necessary. I said, I'm not here for applause. I came to give something back. I nodded slightly in Hannah's direction. 2 team members, each carrying svelte black folders, followed her forward. Inside were signed event contracts, one for each visitor. Layla Morgan is her name. They have a single note and itemized rates. Occasionally, the story you attempted to remove still ends up on the wall, close to the rear. Janine laughed softly, knowingly. Why didn't you use your full name from the beginning? A gentle older man standing next to my father asked. I hesitated because I wanted to construct something before anyone made a decision about what it should be. As I moved away, he nodded quietly and with understanding in his eyes. It was the noise, not the light, that dimmed the ballroom. I didn't feel invisible for the first time in years. A diplomat was discreetly assigned to the VIP suite that Sophie had insisted on calling 4 times to secure. Arriving late, she was heavily pregnant. Naturally, Sophie's new room was still lovely, but it was the same kind of alley that I used to clean for $9.75 an hour. Aunt Janine came looking for me, but my father never did. After 11 p.m., she knocked on the door of my office. She wasn't invited in. She didn't inquire. All she did was give me an envelope. It contained a picture I hadn't seen in many years. I was on the back porch of the old Bristow house, maybe 8 years old. My father's hand rested lightly on my shoulder while he held a pitcher of lemonade in both hands. Not for anything noteworthy, but because I spilt the lemonade a few minutes later, I remembered that day. Fearful of receiving a reprimand, nobody spoke. They chuckled. I didn't feel like I belonged on the back again after that. You were woven into Janine's looping script. That was all. Before I could say anything, she was gone. I rode the elevator to the service floor the following morning. The housekeeping staff was getting started. Some gave a nod. A young woman grinned and then averted her gaze. I strolled over to the former supply room. Our break area is now. Near the rear wall was a coat rack. I took the framed name tag out of my bag. Lila, cleaning. Above the jackets I hung it. No spotlight, no plaque, just a nail and some wood. Sophie left a note in her room later that day. We did something that you didn't deserve. Although I didn't respond, the return address appeared on the reunion invitation sent out the following spring. Caldwell Miracle at Ellen. Group. Please subscribe and stick around if my story speaks to you. I didn't construct Maple Harbor to make a statement. I constructed it to provide a home for people like us. Tell me what they attempted to remove from you in the comments section below. Even if the voice is only a whisper, it still matters. If you have ever been forgotten or forgotten, no, you are not by yourself. It matters how strong you are in silence. And your future is built with each little step you take. Together we surpass everyone's expectations, so please subscribe and come along on this journey with me. Your assistance means the world to me. Story 3 at my mother's 60th birthday. Start today your $500 paycheck and all future bonuses go to the family fund or you're out, she said, lifting a glass. You're not serious, I said in a whisper. My brother, however, nodded next to her. Without saying another word, I got up and walked away. They made a panic call a few hours later. She didn't even blink when I whispered, "You're not serious," holding on to the table's edge so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My mom looking stunning in a gold gown. As an early birthday present, she undoubtedly made me pay for the past 6 months. Surrounded by a dozen family members standing at the head of the long table and raising her glass as if to toast a promotion next to her. With a smug expression and no sign of embarrassment, my older brother Julian nodded. "I mean it," she said, grinning as though it were a momentous occasion. "We're starting a new chapter today. The future lies in the family fund. And you'll be the cornerstone of it, Michael." Everyone in the room chuckled, as if she had made a clever toast. As if this wasn't a financial hostage situation during a birthday dinner, and I was part of it. Slowly I got to my feet. My chair screamed as it scraped the tile floor. "You're kidding." I looked around and repeated. Carlos abruptly became very interested in my cousin's wine glass after she simply turned away. "No," Mom said plainly, then shrugged a little. "Families act in this way, so it's only fair that you've been doing well. We support one another in taking assistance. In this family, things had always been one way. I'm giving." Julian then said, "We're trying to build something bigger than just individual success," while folding his arms. "To the family you owe it." I didn't respond. I simply grabbed my coat from the chair's back, turned, and left. I continued walking down the hallway, despite my mother's voice calling my name. I went directly to my car, turned on the ignition, and drove away. No place to go. Right away. A few hours later, I was sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark. My phone began to ring. Mom, then Julian, but then again, and once more, until the text finally began. "Give us a call back. There is an urgent situation. You can't simply walk away like that. Michael, we must speak. Something has occurred." That night, I didn't pick up the phone. Not when Mom sent 5 consecutive texts feigning concern. Not when Julian's voicemail began with, "Calm down, Mike," and ended with a curt, "You're acting too young," since this was nothing new. This was no impromptu tantrum at a birthday dinner. Years of covert exploitation masquerading as love culminated in this. "Allow me to return you. I am a 32-year-old systems engineer employed by a Seattle-based high-performance cloud architecture company. After taxes and bonuses, the base pay is $5,500 per month. Significant. I do what I do well, not ostentatious, but reliable. In Belltown, I've been making rent payments on a modest studio. Living below my income, I make a budget, I preserve. I'm not a party animal, I don't waste money. Because I've been supporting my family for the last 8 years. It was little at first. "Michael, your brother just needs a little assistance paying the rent this month, honey. He has a job in between." Julian left his 3rd startup job at that point because he felt that the corporate structure stifled his creativity. "Michael, my dear, is it possible for you to float the down payment for the new family vehicle? Following the tax return, we will reimburse you." Warning, they didn't. 5 years have passed since then. Do they still drive that vehicle? Call it nonetheless. As if I had never even sat in it before. After Dad's death, things became more heated. Abruptly. Aneurysm. Not a warning. Someone had to step in, so I did. At 25, I was still making student loan payments. Abruptly, I found myself paying the mortgage on a home I didn't occupy. Julian, he is in mourning. 2 weeks after the funeral, according to Mom, he and his girlfriend traveled to Cancun to grieve. I made a steady, silent payment because I believed that's what good sons do. Mom would always say things like, "Your father would be so proud of you," or "Your brother isn't as lucky as you," whenever I tried to back off. He requires additional assistance. Support that word. It started to mean sacrifice your peace so we don't have to change. Julian burned through 3 failed businesses and never once held a full-time job for more than a year. He called himself a serial entrepreneur, but he was just a serial spender. Fancy suits, new tech networking events in Napa Valley. All paid for by me, even if no one said it aloud. One time he literally sent me a Venmo request labeled Family Legacy Expansion. It was for $1,200. I turned it down. He texted, "Wow, way to be a team player." 5 minutes later, my mom called. "What's wrong with you, Michael? You're being spiteful while Julian is attempting to construct something." I became aware of something unsightly at that point. This family didn't have a son like me. The donor was me. The bank. The person they could blame for the carelessness of everyone else. It was therefore not shocking when the birthday dinner took place. This was the first time they had made such a statement in public. It wasn't the first family fund. It had been there all along. It was simply unspoken before. Their needs, my bonuses, and my paycheck. Their way of life, my limits, negotiable. Now, however, right now, they were placed in institutions. My servitude was formalized as if I were an employee. What was worse about it, the fact that they expected me to smile about it, was even worse. To toast to it and raise my glass, to express my gratitude for allowing me to finance their lives. That's why I didn't say anything more. My cousin Jess sent me a message the following morning. Quiet kind, avoids family drama most of the time. I wanted to check in. "I heard you left early from the party. Is everything all right?" I gave one sentence in response. As if it were an inheritance, they attempted to claim my income. She called right away. Chaos apparently broke out after I left. Julian's speech about family unity was an attempt to salvage the moment. Mom was in tears. Uncle Ray made a passive-aggressive remark about how selfish the younger generation is. Julian then declared in front of everyone that I had consented to begin making regular contributions to the family fund that week. Then, quiet, since I hadn't. Nothing had been agreed to by me. Stated that when I failed to return, the atmosphere became icy. Nobody was sure what to do. They bided their time. They made a call. They went into a panic. Julian then reportedly began editing a spreadsheet named Michael's Contributions after logging into the family's shared Google Drive. 24 looked like a budget line for my money, as though I were a resource. I got an envelope 3 days later. My mother's typewritten letter was inside. It's not an email. It was a letter, not a call. "Dear Michael, we're worried about you," was the first line. I had embarrassed her at her birthday party. It continued that I needed to learn how to share my success if I wanted to stay in this family, and that my actions were hurtful and disruptive. She used terms like financial empathy and emotional maturity. "You've always been the reliable one," she said. "You have greater responsibility as a result." What's the kicker? By Friday, we anticipate the first contribution to be deposited. The routing information will be sent by Julian. Don't apologize. No recognition of the error of this. Simply put entitlement to expectations, as if I were a worker who didn't reach a quota. I slipped the letter into the trash, folded it, and put it back in the envelope. Then I took a step that I ought to have taken years earlier. I had a plan. That night, I didn't get much sleep. Anger was no longer the only emotion. Clarity was the key. It felt like a betrayal to leave, as if I had been gaslighted for so long. Now, however, it felt like oxygen. And I wasn't going to just disappear. They wanted a family fund. Fine. They would never forget what I gave them. I redirected my paycheck to a new account at a different bank by calling my HR department the following morning. One member of my family was unaware of its existence. I silently closed the previous one. After that, I signed a larger one-bedroom lease over the phone with my leasing agent. No shared spaces, no roommates, no. "Could we spend the weekend at your house?" Mike from Julian's never-ending list of unpaid business associates. The actual move, however, I reserved a seat at Mom's favorite pricey bistro for lunch. She pleaded with me to take her there on her 58th birthday. Only this once, due to tradition. I sent the family group chat a message. "Yes, we did right after having one. Let's have a conversation. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. for lunch. I'll pay for it almost immediately." Julian gave a thumbs up in response. "I'm glad you're finally coming around," Mom said. "My dear, please bring the first deposit slip. I learned all I needed to know from that. They believed they still had me. I arrived the following day wearing a fitted suit. I didn't have to. I wanted to look them in the eye as their story fell apart, but I never wear suits outside of conferences." Mom was already at the table with a queenly smile. Julian was sitting next to her and looking through what appeared to be printed spreadsheets. I took a seat and remained silent. "Michael," Mom began grabbing my hand. This is excellent. I always knew you would come to your senses, even though I know emotions were running high. Your father is exactly like you. You get it duty to the family. Julian moved a piece of paper across the table. He sipped his drink and said nonchalantly, "Here's a draft of the monthly transfers. We took into account your previous 3 bonuses. It costs a reasonable $2,800 a month, which includes utilities, groceries, and rent. I would hardly have enough for myself as a result." And it wasn't just that. Tears were shed. Bonuses in excess of $10,000, 70% goes to the fund. Consulting or freelancing, 60% modest. Julian smiled and repeated, "I wanted to turn the tables because of that." I folded my arms and leaned back. Just to make sure I understood, I said slowly, "Okay. What is the role of the family fund?" Mom blinked. "It helps everyone." "Who are all of them?" She said that I'm not working at the moment due to my sciatica and your brother's startup is still in development. And I didn't lose my job because Uncle Ray did. I explained everything else. Michael, avoid being petty. I read the fine print and picked up the contract. In fact, Julian had attempted to construct it as though it were a legally binding contract, as if he were overseeing a trust fund. "Is this a joke?" I asked bluntly. Julian changed his face. "Don't start, man." "You concurred. I disagreed. You announced it. You all clapped as if I was Santa Claus. Before we could explain, you departed. I went out. You attempted to handcuff my financial future, so I intervened. To a family full of grown-ups who wouldn't accept accountability. Quiet." Mom leaned in, her voice soft, manipulative. "Sweetheart, you've always been the strong one. You've always been there for us. That's right." I said, "And I'm finished." Her eyes widened. "Please pardon me." I dropped the contract onto my untouched plate and got up. I've finished paying for Julian's unsuccessful tour. I'm done footing the bill for your emergency pretended vacations. I'm particularly tired of acting like I'm in love. The same amount of sacrifice. "Michael," she let out a gasp, "don't speak to your mother in a rude manner. No, you are no longer allowed to blame me. After years of draining me, you have no right to call me ungrateful." Julian got to his feet. "Hey, bro, relax." I looked over at him. "You are 35 years old. Adult up. Get a job." "Julian, you're not creating a legacy. You're holding on to one that was made by someone else." He tightened his jaw. "Do you believe that you are superior to everyone?" "No, but I'm better than this," I said. I took out a folder made of manila and placed it on the table. "What is that?" Mom inquired. "Receipts. Every transfer," I said. "Every present. Each and every loan. You promised to repay more than $78,000. I calculated it." Julian gave a snort. "Are you now keeping score?" I gave him a direct look. "Indeed, since you never did." I turned to leave. His mother called my name. Didn't turn around that evening. The message began. "Julian, Mom was embarrassed by you. You are behaving like a kid. This is only a phase, Mom. You'll settle down. Give me a call." Then there was quiet. Then 2 days later, fear. Julian. More family ties or startup investors were leaving. The word had gotten out. I had stopped contributing to the fund. And you know who they all believed to be, the true source of funding, me without my name on it. The entire operation appeared to be a setup, and as a result, it ultimately collapsed. Uncle Ray and Aunt Carla called next, followed by a voicemail from Mom that began calmly and ended with tears. "Please, Michael, your brother did something wrong. All we need is a little assistance to get through this quarter. After that, we can go over the numbers again. All right? No, no longer." The consequences were immediate. It was like removing a Jenga block from the base of the tower they had constructed on my back the moment I left that lunch. Everything started to fall apart quickly and loudly. That same afternoon, I switched my phone number. "Not anymore. Would you mind speaking for a moment?" Julian's voicemails, "No more Michael. That was not our intention." Mom texted. I had stopped playing cleanup. For the first time in years, I was finished. I had the silence, and it was wonderful. They didn't take it well, though. Not even close. By the end of that week, Julian had sent me an urgent email. "Write about his company, please." When investors discovered that I was no longer the primary financial backer, they withdrew their largest supplier and abandoned the project that I had been covertly funding for years. It turns out that Julianne had been using my name and pitches without my consent, saying things like, "Thanks to family support, we have 6 figures of runway, and my brother has us covered through Q4. Everyone is watching. all predicated on the idea that I would never leave. However, I did. And in a matter of days, the financial house of cards he constructed under my name fell apart. Mom began phoning burner numbers. I paid them all no attention. Then the subject line appeared in an email. There is still time to correct this. What should be fixed? Your total reliance on me. You've believed for decades that I only exist to support your extravagant lifestyles. Nothing needed to be fixed. All that was to be claimed was freedom. I had moved into my new apartment in less than 2 weeks, larger than I required, sleek and contemporary. Like a vault, it had a heavy door that locked, the kind of door that nobody trespasses through to use your Wi-Fi, or spend the weekend in a crash. At last I received my pay. I didn't figure out how much I needed to save for Julian's emergency phone upgrade or my mother's dental work before I went grocery shopping. I made an investment in new equipment for my side business. I signed up for a gym, slept, inhaled. I didn't see fatigue when I looked in the mirror for the first time. I was spotted. It was both beautiful and surreal. The family then started to fall apart. As if I were some sort of fountain Uncle Ray called the man who once told me that money flows upward in families. You wanted to talk to me about how I handled the situation. I informed him that I would only communicate via email. Carla sent me a Facebook message to check on me, but he never got back to me. Said that Julian appeared to be a ghost and that Mom was devastated. Despite her differences, I left her on red, Cousin Jess. She texted you, and whatever you said to them rocked the whole family tree. I chuckled. It also didn't feel bitter for once. It was earned. Then the tipping point arrived. I received a call from an unidentified number a month after I disconnected them. I wouldn't normally respond, but I felt compelled to pick Michael up. Mom was the one. She spoke in a tiny, strange voice. I'm in your structure. All I want to do is talk. I nearly hung up. Nearly. Something within me, though. There was a tiny portion that could still recall a time before the manipulation. Let her have 5 minutes. That was all. 5. She held a Tupperware container as if it were a peace offering while she waited in the lobby. My favorite rice and roast chicken were inside, like I was a child again. She didn't grin, didn't plead. Can we sit? I just said. In the corner we discovered 2 chairs. I said nothing at all. She began slowly. I was unaware of the harm we were causing to you. Not at all. I arched an eyebrow. Required a financial collapse and public outcry for that. She grimaced. Yes, I am aware of how that sounds. After that, she took a folder out of her purse. Receipts. All of my transactions, deposits, and transfers to pay off the mortgage. Julian's failed business ventures. She claimed that a friend had given her the cruise as a gift. A total of $78.450. You kept records, Julian informed me. I didn't think he was real. I assumed you were simply being aloof. I examined the figures. Chilly. This was a matter of survival. My autopsy on finances. She went on, I don't expect forgiveness. I simply wanted to let you know. Now I see it. Everything. Then she said it. I thought I would never hear that one sentence. You were used by us, not trusted, not requested assistance, utilized. She said, I wanted to think I was being a good mother. However, I was using you as a source of revenue. I referred to your pushback as ungrateful. Her voice broke, and I apologized sincerely. I remained silent. I simply sat there and let her confession ring like a church bell in my ears. The folder was left on the chair next to me by her. She left after that. Julian texted me 1 week later. Don't be theatrical. Just, you were correct. I'm beginning anew. This time for real. Then a picture of him at a warehouse holding a clipboard while wearing a work vest. Minimum wage position, real work. I grinned but didn't answer, because they never understood this. Retaliation was not the reason for cutting them off. The topic was recuperation. It was about taking back a life that had been gradually robbed of its vitality, color, and independence. One request for Venmo at a time. I treated myself to dinner last Friday, an actual one. 1 table, candle, a glass of wine. While scrolling through apartment listings, I sat silently. I was able to move for the first time in my life, not because I had to. My phone exploded. Jess sent a message. I'm proud of you. The match was lit by you. Allow them to experience the warmth. And I did. I still do. They assumed I would return. They did it every time. They pushed until a certain point each time I established a boundary. Every no turned into maybe every. This is the final instance. Became yet another anomaly. Not this time, though. I vanished this time and remained absent, and it drove them crazy for a while. We used to be close, and Mom cried as she texted, called, emailed, and left voicemails. Julian tried to force me back into the role I was born into by sending me a series of messages filled with guilt. The bank, the backup plan, and the fixer. I paid them all no attention. And they became anxious because for the first time their plan had not worked out when the silence lasted longer than they had anticipated. Furthermore, I didn't rush back to make things right. The finest aspect. My life immediately improved. For reasons unrelated to me, my account balance stopped declining. At last I had my weekends. I began to eat better, sleep better, and smile more. I was no longer merely getting by, I was getting better. At last I had space to construct my life, not theirs. I resumed my old pastimes, took a genuine holiday, purchased items for myself that I once referred to as needless luxuries, because it was always someone else's crisis. I went back to dating someone who asked me what I loved instead of what I earned, and I experienced a wild and alien feeling for the first time in my adult life, after several months. Mom wrote me a handwritten letter that was smeared with tears, which I didn't realize were there because we were barely surviving. Julianne is also having trouble. She referred to it as a miscommunication. I referred to it as 10 years of financial strain that I was never permitted to question. The family missed me, so she pleaded with me to come home for Thanksgiving. That without you, nothing feels quite right. For the first time, everything in my world felt just right, and I nearly burst out laughing. Not long afterward, Julian became dark. He told me that after the startup failed, he moved in with a friend. No income, no more investors. She only mentioned that he was at last discovering what life without a safety net is like. Not with me. Excellent. Give him the same weight and strain that I used to bear by myself as he grows. Then perhaps he'll get it. Perhaps he will finally understand. He might not. But saving him is no longer my responsibility. The reality. I was never loved by them. I did something for them that they adored, and the moment I ceased to produce, ceased to bend and to sacrifice, they became icy, accused me of being unfaithful, because saying no is the greatest sin in their world. However, I would rather be despised for leaving than adored for being a doormat, and they now have to live with that decision. I also live with mine. I sipped the most expensive coffee I could find last week while sitting by myself in my favorite cafe. I grinned as well. It was because of the money I spent that day, not because of the scenery or the silence. I owned it. I earned it. Spent money on me, not sucked into some endless family abyss. Not stolen in the name of solidarity, only mine. And to me that was freedom, even though it might not seem like much to others. The last truth is as follows. Your paycheck is not something you owe your family. Your peace is not due to them. Just because you share DNA doesn't mean you have to live your entire life with them. They owe you nothing. As soon as they begin to treat you more like an asset than a human being, they referred to me as cold. I was referred to as heartless. They accused me of being ungrateful. All right, permit them. Being ungrateful is preferable to being used. I'd rather be by myself than exhausted. I prefer to be free, totally, with strength, unreservedly free. I am too.